now 9 a.m. and I call this meeting of the Granbury Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. At this time, Trustee Alana, will you lead us in the invocation?
Our most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we love you and we praise you. We thank you, Lord, for each and every blessing that you have given to us. We thank you for the people of Granbury and the people of Granbury Isd that work together. And Lord, we just pray for all of our citizens, all of our students, and pray, Lord, that you'll be with us today. Lord, help us as we go through this meeting to make good decisions. And Lord, just guide us through the rest of this day. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And now for the pledges.
Please join me in the pledges.
Allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. At this time, we will go into our public comments. We have 3 people who've signed up for public comments. Just a little reminder that during this portion of public comments, the board will allow citizens who have appropriately signed up in advance to speak on agenda items. The board will allow 3 minutes for each speaker. As a reminder, trustees may ask or provide clarification under board policy DEP. Please understand that in accordance with Texas law, the board is not able to respond directly to comments or questions posed by the speakers during public comments. Therefore, GISD staff members review all submissions and, if necessary, reach out to seek resolution or additional information prior to the meeting. Individuals addressing your concerns are encouraged to review and seek resolution to the district's policy for handling complaints. We ask those in attendance to be respectful listeners during public comments so that everyone in the audience can clearly hear each speaker. Speakers, when you get to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. Those who intend to present trustees with items or supplemental materials will need to submit those items to security personnel. For safety reasons, we ask that you do not approach the dais. The agenda item is to consider a resolution to disapprove the proposed 2020-25 Hood County Appraisal District budget. This has nothing to do with appraisal values. So if you signed up to speak regarding appraisal values, that is not our agenda. We have no say over that. This is about the Hood County Appraisal District budget. At this time, Mr. Mayor Jim Jarrett.
Thank you, board. Appreciate you guys coming out on this special meeting and this special day. And I want to right up front say that I know that I suspect Mr. Law did not get to sign up because he's been busy all week, but I have absolutely no problem should you find time for him to speak or questions that you might ask of him. I'm great with that. Let me start. The appraisal district has listed how many reams of paper, how many bottles of ink are needed, but failed to list the positions, salaries, benefits, and other perks as required by the tax code. That's tax code 61065A. The appraisal district has covered 25% of their budget in great detail, but 75% of their proposed budget expenses are grouped together and not visible to the public. These are the salaries, benefits, etc., that are supposedly listed by position as per the tax code. And there was no organizational chart, which is not required, but is a nicety that I would love to see in that budget. And I will point out that next door, Elam County, though not exactly equal to us, is extremely close to us in terms of area, number of appraisal documents that they have to do, the whole thing like that. And they are 1/3 what we are. And they're flat. They've been flat for the last 5 years. Our expenses just keep going up year after year after year. I also want to comment that it's been said, look, this is personal, this is political. I want to assure you it's not political. It is very personal. It's personal because I'm a taxpayer. It's personal because I took an oath to uphold the Texas Constitution, and it's personal because I took an oath to serve the citizens of the city of Granbury. Not standing up and saying that this is a flawed and overburdened budget I would be derelict. Simply stated, the funds that have been appropriated to the HCAD as per their approved budget should be spent as appropriated. In other words, dollars budgeted for paper should be spent on paper, building maintenance, some dollars on building maintenance. That's how the dollars were appropriated, and any other use of dollars other than how they were appropriated is misappropriation of these fiduciary funds. If there's an excess at the end of the year, the tax code says any funds at the end of the year to be returned to the tax entities unless they've been obligated. Obligated funds are financial commitments that HCAD is required to pay, even if the actual payment has not been made. This occurs when HCAD enters into a binding agreement or contract that commits it to incurring a certain cost. Simply having board approval of excess funds to a non-specific committed expense is not an obligated fund. I am also asking that the auditor who did the last, the 2023 audit for HCAD have a meeting with all concerned parties and go over and explain why that audit had to be restated so significantly. And once we do that, I think we'll all want a forensic audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jim Brown.
Board, thank you for your time. I did want to thank you for taking this time and, in essence, hurrying up to slow down. It is important to remember that taxpayers vote you in to these positions. We continue to ask that you be fiscally responsible and spend money more responsible, since HCAD is a big part of GISD. It is a big concern. And as part of that their budget is important. That right now, as taxpayers, many of the taxing entities right now are currently asking for more money. So therefore, it is very important that you take your time to slow down, look at these other budgets that impact GISD specifically, so that we can continue to do what we can to shorten up or shore up the monies spent, so that we do have, I would personally like to at least again ask that more money be put towards the M&O budget. However, HCADs that are concerned, thank you again for taking this time to take a special meeting to again hurry up and slow down, think through what's going on. Money is important to everybody right now. So thank you for your time.
Christy, will you take that back?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. At this time, Monica Brown.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm speaking up as a citizen. I appreciate this special call meeting. I think this is a step in the right direction. It's the first time that I've been involved in the last 3 years where I'm watching you deal with something very difficultly in a difficult situation. It's a hard thing, and I'm applauding that you're listening to the mayor. I applaud the mayor for his research and for his consistent effort to step up and to speak up. So I want to applaud that. I want to encourage all of you to continue on this path to look at your policies and follow them. So accountability, honesty, integrity, the board ethics, so we don't have any more of the shenanigans we had the last 3 years, all the violations. So in this case, I want you to know, for me, through this process, I have come to represent 5 counties. And so when this meeting was called, I contacted all of them and all of their trustees and all of their superintendents, because I'm not stepping back, I'm stepping forward. I'm we the people, I'm Granbury concerned citizens, I'm a husband and wife team who don't have children in the district, and there's reasons why we don't, and it wasn't all negative. It was a lifestyle choice for us. It's the way we want to live. But here I am today to applaud you for hopefully you will disapprove that budget because it's the right thing to do. And it doesn't mean you're being mean to anyone. It means you're doing what responsible people do. You've been called elected officials, and that's true, but you're also public servants, and that's hard. Being a servant is a hard thing. Being a professional is a hard thing. Stepping up and doing what is right here is really important, and it's going to benefit everybody. It will benefit the children, public school, private school, homeschool, all of them. So I appreciate you listening to what this good man has said and rising up and just doing that. Be the tip of the spear. The other counties have been put on notice. All those trustees have been put on notice, not just by me, but by me and others who are behind me who are here. Some of them are here, and some of them are at home watching right now, to support you and the other trustees and the other superintendents in accountability and in right actions. Then the people can get behind your goals and your dreams. Together, we can do that. So again, just want to say thank you. I appreciate Barbara Townsend's not here, but she made that public hearing at 6 the other night. I wasn't there, the one where everyone got to speak, and I just appreciate that change because I think that helps the public get involved a little more than 5. So I just want to say thank you for that. Thank you for this. I hope that before this meeting's over that you vote to disapprove the HCAD budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Okay, so getting into the agenda, it is to consider a resolution to disapprove the proposed 2025 Hood County Appraisal District budget. The purpose for calling this meeting, I spent the better part of 2 days last week meeting with Jeff Law, Dave Rodriguez, and the mayor going over this information after watching that 2-hour meeting from the city council. I had a lot of questions and I needed more information. I have a lot of information to share with the board. The only way to be able to do that is to call a special meeting. So, during that special, or not special meeting, but during that meeting for the city council, there was this graphic that was presented. And y'all should have that in your agenda packet. And I just want to go over some of the information real quick. You have this one. Y'all don't have this one. Okay. And we'll skip that. Do you? It should have been in your agenda packet. Was it not in the packet? Yes, this is the same one the city council used, but if y'all didn't have time to watch it, then you may not have this. It's okay. Yeah. Okay. We're passing. There. That one on there, I just wanted to address a couple things, information that I found out through these meetings. You'll see a big spike in the year 2022. And on that purple bar, that was money that was given back to us. That was money that was in the fund for building the building that we were talking about for the appraisal district and for TxDOT to kind of share together. That money was returned to the taxing entities. It just sticks out there because they put it somewhere, I guess, from the audit. It was not an actual expense, though. It was just a fund balance that they had for that building, which HCAD gave back to all the taxing entities. So that money we got back. These other little yellow bars on there where it says non-approved expenses, I just wanted to go over those with y'all real quick. Those were expenses that were paid out to the architect companies. That money has been spent, and all of the money was done in open session and voted on in a public meeting. And so I guess maybe there's some disagreement between some of the taxing entities whether it was approved or not, but it was all approved during open session meetings. And that money, the architect gave services, and so those services had to be paid for. As far as the HCAD budget goes.
I'm sorry, what, on the.
You want to see this?
Talking about what year?
It's in there for all of them.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But it was money HCAD they were putting aside for that building fund, which we were all aware of. I just don't know if, I think there may be some disagreement there between the mayor and the HCAD on how that was going about. It was all done in open session. All the meetings were posted. It was all taken in a public meeting. The vote was, and it's in their minutes. So whether people agree with the way it was spent or not is neither here nor there. It was all done legally. As far as HCAD budget goes, this, in our resolution that we have here, it talks about the, thank you, Mr. Whitefield. It talks about the line items for employees and their benefits are not listed out. If you look in the budget, it has the total payroll costs in there, it has insurance benefits in there, retirement benefits, etc., but they're not line item out by the employees and their positions. That's something that's in our resolution that's not done in their budget. I'm sure that's an easy change they could make if they need to. The other thing that we need to look at is at the end of the year, at the end of the fiscal year, if there's any excess revenue, that money being credited back to us, which historically, we've gotten a lot of that money back, and HCAD has a need to keep some sort of a fund balance. So looking at that, we might want to look at having a regulator placed on there as far as they keep up to a certain percentage to keep a fund balance. Anything in excess of that comes back to the taxing entities. And I don't know if Mr. Law, if you want to come speak more to that and how that works.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. And I apologize for not signing up earlier. I didn't realize there was a 72-hour requirement. But yes, what Ms. Gore is speaking of is correct. The appraisal districts have been advised for many, many, many years. We're a public entity just like you are. We're a special purpose local government established by the state of Texas. And auditors have said that we should maintain a fund balance. Now the question has always been how large of a fund balance. Some auditors have said 1 to 2 months worth of fund balance. Some have gone as high as, say, 3 to 4 months of fund balance. I think for an appraisal district this size, and obviously with the issues that some of the other tax units bring up, 1 to 2 months is appropriate. I think 2 months is a good number. As Ms. Gore says, not only, I think in your resolution, you're talking about returning excess. That's actually a state law. I mean, it's in the law right now that any excess proceeds that we have that are not obligated, we have to either return them to the taxing entities or we have to credit the taxing entities. Now, I would recommend to the board of directors of the appraisal district that we ought to establish a policy to have at least 2 months worth of fund balance. Right now, after our 2023 audit, we have $426,000 in excess proceeds. $110,000 of those have been obligated for litigation expenses, repairs and maintenance on the building, and technology. Sorry, I haven't had my coffee yet. Technology. So of the $426,000, $110,000 has been obligated. There are $316,000 worth of fund balances that are unassigned, undesignated, that represent 1.2 months of reserve or fund balance. Now, I have not proposed to the board of directors, and the board of directors hasn't taken it up whether or not we would refund that money or whether we would hold it as a fund balance for the appraisal district. If we held a 2 months fund balance, it would be approximately $500,000 in our fund balance.
So when does the board of directors make that determination on whether to refund that or retain it as a fund balance? How does that process work?
Well, generally it's done after our annual audit. Now this year our annual audit didn't come, I think, until June, a little bit late in the season. Might actually have been July. But generally after they get the audit back from the auditor, just to know exactly how much of the fund balance there would be left over, the board could make a decision at that time. Now, when the board received that audit from the auditors, I had commented to them that the amount of money that is left over doesn't even cover 2 months worth of fund balance. And at that particular time, I had made the recommendation to not refund that $316,000 back to the entities for us to hold it as a fund balance. Because our auditors were saying you ought to have at least 2 months. And that didn't even represent. Now, as Ms. Gore pointed out, the district did refund back in 2023 over $1.9 million of monies back to the entities that they were holding for the purposes of capital outlay, land and building purchase. And that's an argument that has been hashed out quite a bit. But the district did return it. So, and I actually think they returned maybe a little bit more than what was actually withheld, but it was returned. So I think that's the reason we're kind of down low on our fund balance right now. But generally, after the auditors have determined exactly what the amount of the fund balance would be, then the board of directors could take action to either credit or refund money.
Okay, and then one other thing, our budget, Dr. Dixon, it went up 0. So our budget went up 0.85%, and then their budget went up by
Is about
7.4%. Can you explain a little bit more about why your budget increased?
Sure. A couple of things. One, we've been impacted by inflation like any other entity. So as the mayor had pointed out, about 75% of our budget is personnel-related expense. I really did two things in this 2025 budget. One was I proposed a 4% merit raise for employees. That's a large portion of it. But then also I chose to bring back the position of Deputy Chief Appraiser. The appraisal district here in Hood County has had a position of Deputy Chief for many, many, many years, decades. And during the tenure of the previous Chief Appraiser, and I believe during the 2023 budget, just so you'll know, I came in September of 2023, so I wasn't privileged to all of the adoption of the 22 budget or the 23 budget, but I believe in the 23 budget they were looking for ways to trim costs. The taxing entities had, there's several tax entities that disapproved the budget for 2023. When they were looking for that, the previous Chief Appraiser, when he was promoted from Deputy Chief Appraiser to Chief Appraiser, he did not replace himself as a Deputy Chief. It went vacant, and then in 2023 the position was removed for the budget. I believe it is a necessary position for the district, just like you all have deputy superintendents and the cities have deputy city managers and things of that nature. I think the appraisal district needs a position like that as well. So I reintroduced that position, but I did not. I left the current staff as it was with 20 employees, and I added a position to take us to 21. So that's the two large items. Another item that was added straight to the budget was a $65,000 line item for building renovations. The board kind of said, well, if we can't build a new facility like we need, then we better do some renovations on the building that we have. So they added that line item as well. So that was the three major issues that would cause the budget to increase the way that it did.
And I know personally we've talked, and I've talked about how the 4% raise, I mean, I understand having to give cost of living raises, and I've expressed my concern about a little bit of heartburn it gives me because we didn't give our employees raises this year. So
Sure.
It's given me a little bit of heartburn, but I understand also having to be competitive with surrounding appraisal districts. That was one of the reasons why we had to give raises, because we were not competitive enough. So is that an issue y'all are having, keeping personnel?
A little bit, yes. We actually lost one employee to Somerville County. Got a very sizable raise when she left us. I'll add, when I considered the 4% increase, appraisal districts in Texas have to do their budgets so far in advance of the other tax entities. We have to have our budget prepared and ready to go so we can send a June proposal to all the tax entities. And then not until July, August, do the taxing entities themselves start preparing for budgets. So a lot of times I would like to, we call around and say, hey, what are you thinking about as far as raises? So that we can be kind of in line with what our taxing unit partners are doing. It's my understanding the county is proposing a 3% increase. And before knowing any of this, I had proposed a 4% increase. So it's always been a struggle for appraisal districts to kind of be in the same page, because there were many, many times when I would call, when I was at another appraisal district, I'd call around, they're like, we're not sure what we're doing, we're not sure. But I have to get a budget out by June. So we would go ahead and put a number in there. So that was really the reason behind why the 4% was put in place as opposed to another number.
And have you seen that a similar raise with surrounding districts?
Actually, I'm seeing more. Honestly, there was about probably a couple months ago, pardon me, that I'm on an email list with all appraisal districts across the state, and they were doing the same thing. What's everybody doing as far as raises? I saw everything from 2% to 9% as far as raises go. Probably the average was in that 3 to 4% range across the board.
Okay, and just to be clear, right now you have about $316,000 in your general funds that
My
could.
fund balance.
I'm sorry?
My fund balance.
In your fund balance, I'm sorry. And that, as of right now, the plan is to retain those funds to make this budget work. Is that
Well,
correct?
it's to retain those funds just to have a small fund balance in place in the event of a catastrophe or something like that. I mean, it's been raised that, oh, well, the taxing entity should be your fund balance. Well, okay, I can understand that, but if something were to come through a tornado or something like that, where our building was wiped out or heavily damaged, we would need funds instantaneously to do something about it. Now, we could get money back most likely through insurance claims and things like that, but if we had to do something instantaneously, we would need funds available to us. The other thing it does, it kind of protects us too from a standpoint if a taxing entity doesn't make their quarterly payment or doesn't pay their share of our budget, and you think, well, when would that ever happen? Well, it happened last year. And actually, when I was up in Tarrant County, there was a time in which Fort Worth ISD didn't pay for 2 or 3 months. So it can cause an issue, and it's there just to protect the district to some extent, to make cash flow, make payroll, and things of that nature. But the biggest concern would be to have some amount of money on hand immediately in case of some kind of catastrophic event, which hopefully that will never happen.
And if y'all were to refund that money back to the taxing entities, then y'all wouldn't have any fund balance.
We would have no fund balance whatsoever, other than the $110,000 that's been obligated for other expenditures.
The contingencies and technology, et cetera.
Exactly.
Okay.
I want to be transparent, but I mean, if you think about it this way, there's $426,000 that's in our fund balance. $110,000 has been committed and obligated for other expenditures.
So the remaining would be the 316.
316, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Any other questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay. Okay, so board, do you have something you want to add? Okay.
First, I guess I entered this whole environment under fire. So, but I do thank the mayor, everybody coming together, because this is an important issue that has not had any attention and should have been important and on everybody's plate for years. And I think that's why there were some not best practices that now we're catching up with. But I would like to point out several things though. When you say your contingency is the 3 things: the uncommitted, the litigation, the repairs, and technology. But you have all 3 of those things in your budget. So you've got it twice, and then you have a contingency line item also in the budget. So now we've got 3 sources of money for the roof that blows off. Right?
Yes, ma'am. I'll give you an example. We do have a technology line item within our budget. The board in 2023 had made the decision to rewire the building as far as our internet connectivity, going from Cat 5 to Cat 6 and some other things like that. That was planned to actually be done in 2023 and those expenditures made in 2023, but due to delays on both the part of the board didn't have a chief appraiser for a while during that time. The board was having to go through the process of hiring a new chief appraiser, and that project kind of got pushed down the road. Well, finally, when I came in 2023, I was kind of said, okay, here's one of our major projects that we need to get done. We've got money budgeted for it. And we went through the process of getting bids, and then the board actually said, well, let's get them rebid, and there was another delay. Ultimately, it turns out that project wasn't going to happen in 2023. So the monies that were going to be spent in 2023 were going to be lost, so to speak, and most likely be sent back. So we made the decision to commit those funds so that we could spend those monies in 2024 when the wiring project actually was completed. And that's what happened there. With regards to building maintenance and things, yes, we do have a line item in the 2025 budget for that. We actually have two line items. One is a capital outlay line item of $65,000 plus normal building, but the board wants to look at doing some extensive remodeling. There's been questions about public restrooms. Our building doesn't have any public restrooms. So there's been talk about, is there a way we could add public restrooms up to the lobby? That's going to be, and so the board made the decision to set aside a little bit more money in order to try to deal with some of these building renovations that quite frankly need to be made. We've outgrown this building. We need a different building. We need a new building. Whether we buy, whether we lease, or whether we build is all up for questions. But so that was part of the reason. And then the second part of this, the third part, I've talked about technology and building. The third part is litigation. We actually were sued we were sued by a record number of property owners in 2022 and 2023. That litigation is still ongoing. I have currently right now 40 active lawsuits regarding value-related litigation. And I recommended to the board that if we're going to litigate these, if we're going to take them to court, if we're going to go through the process of getting expert testimony, we're going to run out of money in the litigation budget, I do believe. So that's the reason that I had recommended, in addition to what we had in the budget, you're right, here's some extra set aside. I mean, I'm sure you've all dealt with litigation in the past. One lawsuit can cost you anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 if you take it all the way to court. Of course, we will try every effort we can to settle. We've been working on some apartment complexes right now to reach settlement offers and get both parties on the same page, but to no avail at this particular time. So that was the reason why we had these excess committed funds obligated for specific purposes, just because we knew that there was expenditures that were most likely coming. Litigation and ARB expenses are always something that is difficult to budget for, because you don't know how many people are going to protest each year, and you don't know how many of those that protest are going to move on to litigation and file lawsuits and things of that nature.
So what is the line item contingency? Like, school districts aren't allowed to have slush funds. What is that then? I would have thought contingencies would have been the backup for your budget.
Well, I think that is true, and again, in the 2023 budget, that contingency line item was raised to $100,000. I actually reduced it to $40,000 in this 2025 budget. In the past, it's actually been less than $10,000. So I think it is just a catch-all for in case you need monies in other line items in the budgets.
Would that not be the same thing as your fund balance?
It could be, yes, ma'am.
So how much money is in there right now?
In the contingency for 2023, it was $100,000 that was budgeted for. But once the budget and everything was audited, the fund balance, the only thing that was left after all the expenditures was the $426,000 or the $316,000. So yeah, that $100,000, it went unspent in 2023, so it would have been part of that $316,000.
So 100,000 of the 316 is line item for contingencies right now.
Not well in 2023. For 2020, I didn't bring the 2024 budget. Let me look and see. I got the current. Let me back up. I misspoke. In 2024, yes, they budgeted $100,000 in contingencies, and so that's what's in contingencies for right now. In 2023, it was less than that. I have my years backwards.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for catching that. But no, for 2024, yes, there's $100,000 in the budget for contingencies. Right now.
The reason we're concerned is our bill is 1.9 million.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we can't buy a bus because we're buying something else with that. You're asking for another person in our organization, the CEO, me. I have 1,300 employees. You're the CEO with 20, and you need an assistant. Yeah, I do. I have several assistants and layered, but I need a maintenance director. Who gets it? It's my money. Do you get an assistant director, or do I get a maintenance director? That's where we're at. Where does our money go? What does our people want us to do with that? We're struggling with, I guess the bottom line is, and what all my colleagues up here are wondering, if we disapprove this budget, what are you going to do?
Well, if a majority of the taxing entities in Hood County disapprove the budget, then the board of directors has to go back and rework a new budget. So most likely what I would do is I would go back and I would look at our budget a little closer and find where I could cut some items out of the budget. I could, go from a 4% raise down to a 3% raise or something like that. I would possibly, I do believe sincerely that we need a deputy chief appraiser position in the budget, so I probably would rework that particular area to some extent. I would find areas to cut if a majority of the taxing entities believe that this budget needs to be disapproved. I wish that instead of having to stand before you today at a special called meeting talking about our 2025 budget, when I mailed the budget out in June of 2024, like the law requires, we didn't adopt this budget until our August meeting. There were 2 months in which conversations like this could have taken place, and I wish they would have, because I could have gone back at that August meeting and said, hey, I've met with some folks, I've talked with some folks, and they think this and this and this might be a little too high. And we could have all avoided this, so to speak, if we'd have had those conversations. During that 2-month period that the state law actually requires us to review this, and Ms. Dixon, you made the comment that that there was some attention that was not paid to this particular item. And obviously going forward, I think for future budgets, when I send them out in June, then they could be looked over. I mean, obviously, Emmett would be probably the point person there to look it over and look at the differences and say, hey, what about this, what about that? And then differences like this could have been worked out way before getting to this particular point, where resolutions are having to be passed or thought of being passed to really address the whole issue that we think you're too high here, we think you could cut back over here.
I agree 100%, and as the board will take full responsibility for that. I personally did not see this until just a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
So,
state law says I have to send it to the presiding officer.
Right.
And a lot of times we'll send it to the presiding officer and the superintendent, just because I know presiding officers tend to be busy. They tend to have other irons in the fire, and same thing. It's people like him, the nuts and bolts guy of actually working the numbers will say, can you send me a copy? I never got a copy. And we're trying our best to follow the law and send it to the presiding officer, but yet also put it in the hands of the people that can get it in the hands of other people that can look at it.
And I appreciate y'all taking the time to meet and answer all of our questions as well. So board, before you have a decision to make as far as whether to pass the resolution. If you vote to approve the resolution, that means you are disapproving the budget. If you vote to not approve the resolution, then the budget will just automatically get approved, or you can vote to take no action at all, and then the budget would be approved. So ultimately, we're looking at approving this HCAD budget or not approving it. Essentially, you're agreeing to the 4% raises, adding the deputy chief appraiser, and allowing them to keep that $316,000 fund balance for their fund balance. We know that all entities need some kind of a working fund balance to be able to operate. I would personally like to see the HCAD, like you spoke of, adopting a policy that states that they'll only have so much in there. So there's some kind of regulator in place, so anything over that amount comes back to the taxing entities. And I think y'all have a good plan moving forward with that. So if you're okay with them keeping that for their fund balance, and you're okay with the 4% raises, you're okay with adding the chief deputy appraiser, then there would be no reason to pass this resolution. If you want them to go back and redo their budget and look at those items more closely and see where they can make some cuts or possibly refund some of that money, then that would be one of the reasons to disapprove this budget or approve the resolution. Did you have anything else you wanted to add on?
So if they we disapprove and they come back with a lower budget, and they come back later and ask for more funds? If it wasn't like later in the year?
So like if they came up in a situation where they needed more money, correct, you would have to come back to the taxing entities to ask for money, correct?
Yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. There's a process in the law that says if the board of directors chooses to amend the budget, we can make an amendment, and they can pass that amendment, and then that amendment comes back to all the taxing entities, and then let's just say, for example, we wanted to add a $500,000 item to the budget, and we make a budget amendment to do so. Then that $500,000 would be presented, and then if the taxing entities again wanted to disapprove it, you would go back to this same process. There's not really a provision in the law anywhere that says the board of directors or the appraisal district has to come to you for approval of something. It would be the process. The appraisal district board of director amends the budget. We send the budget out. If an entity disapproves it, then they would take the same formal action to disapprove that amendment, and we would go through this whole process again. But chances are, as long as I'm the chief appraiser, I've never had an amendment added to a budget ever, and if I was going to do that, most likely I would probably run it through the entities to say, this is what we're planning to do. What say you? Approve, disapprove? Let's get it kind of all ironed out before we have to get to this situation again. But there is a budget amendment process that the board of directors could go through if they wanted to add something.
And so just to be clear, taking that $140,000 contingencies, that could be your fund balance, but that wouldn't be enough to cover 1 month worth of operating expenses.
No, ma'am, because if you take the $3 million-ish or so budget and divide that by 12, about $500,000 to $550,000 is, I think that's 2 months. So $250,000 a month approximately.
Okay.
Is what it really comes out to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mayor.
I don't find it immediately, but I believe that the process, there is certainly a process. You may amend the budget, the board will come, and they send the entity, or they send the amendment to the taxing entities. And the taxing entity, it must be 30 days before the proposed action. And the taxing entities at that point in time can do nothing, and that's a disapproval. The taxing entities at that time have to approve. So it's a different process from, the tail is wagging the dog on this end, or on the other side of that, the amendment, we are not subject to this time constraint that we have to get resolutions, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll find that here before we leave today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so once again, just to reiterate, you can make a motion to approve the resolution. That would disapprove the budget. You can make a motion to not approve the resolution or take no action, and the budget would just continue on for this year. Before we can have discussion as a board, we'll have to entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution. We, the Granbury ISD Board of Trustees, to disapprove the 2025 HCAD budget.
I have a motion from Ms. Graff. Do I have a second?
I'll say.
I have a second from Ms. Solana. And raise your hands to vote for.
Discussion.
Discussion first.
Excuse me, I'm getting over sinus infection, so I'm a little croaky. I would like for us to go over the resolution.
Okay.
I think that before we just overall approve it, I think point by point, it would be beneficial for us and for those that are concerned about this issue, that would go over this point by point.
Would you like me to read it?
Yes.
Okay. Whereas Section 6.06 of the Texas Tax Code requires the chief appraiser shall prepare a proposed budget for the operations of the district for the following tax year and shall submit copies to each taxing unit participating in the district and to the district board of directors before June 15th. And whereas the chief appraiser shall include in the budget a list showing each proposed position, the proposed salary for the position, all benefits proposed for the position, each proposed capital expenditure, and an estimate of the amount of the budget that will be allocated to each taxing unit, and whereas the HCAD board completed its hearings, made amendments to the proposed budget it desired, and approved a budget on August 15th, 2024, and whereas if governing bodies, a majority of the taxing units entitled to vote on the appointment of board members adopt resolutions disapproving a budget and file them with the secretary of the board within 30 days of its adoption, the budget does not take effect, and the board shall adopt a new budget within 30 days of the disapproval. And whereas if the total amount of the payments made or due to be made by the taxing units participating in an appraisal district exceeds the amount actually spent or obligated to be spent during the fiscal year for which the payments were made, the chief appraiser shall credit the excess amount against each taxing unit's allocated payments for the following year in the proportion to the amount of each unit's budget allocation for the fiscal year for which the payments were made. This taxing unit that paid its allocated amount is not allocated a portion of the district's budget for the following fiscal year, the chief appraiser shall refund the taxing units its proportionate share of the excess funds not later than the 150th day after the end of the fiscal year for which the payments were made. Whereas the interlocal agreement between GISD and the HCAD statement that state that in the event the payments received in any 1 year exceed the actual cost of providing services pursuant to this contract, the Central Appraisal District shall either reimburse the jurisdictions or credit future payments to be made by jurisdictions to the extent of the excess funds. Reimbursements or credits shall be distributed to the jurisdictions in the same pro rata rate share as payments are made in the respective 1980 tax year. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be placed in the meeting minutes of the Granbury ISD Board of Trustees, and be it further resolved that the superintendent shall take actions necessary and appropriate to implement this resolution in compliance with state and federal law and district policies in consultation with the Board of Trustees. Now therefore it be resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Granbury Independent School District has determined certificate for resolution. The Hood County Appraisal District is hereby notified and informed that the HCAD Board approved 2025 budget is disapproved by the Granbury ISD Board of Trustees, and the Granbury ISD Board Secretary will deliver this resolution to the HCAD Board of Directors Secretary as formal notification. This resolution shall take effect and be in full force immediately from and after its date of adoption shown below. I hereby certify that the foregoing resolution was presented to the Board of Trustees on the Granbury Independent School District during a lawfully called meeting on September 9th, 2024. A quorum of the board being then present, a motion was made to accept the resolution and seconded. Such resolution was then adopted according to the following vote. And then it has a place to record the votes and any abstentions. In summary, this resolution states that we would be disapproving the budget because we want the budget to list each proposed position, proposed salary for the position, all benefits proposed for the position, each proposed capital expenditure, and an estimate of the amount of the budget that will be allocated to each taxing unit. And
Can I say something right here?
yes,
Does that also include the retirement benefits? We were talking in that paragraph.
correct. That, from what I understand, it's all benefits proposed for this position.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
So as of right now, the salary doesn't list them out like that, or the budget doesn't list them out that way.
Okay, because I noticed a pretty good jump in the retirement benefits. Okay, you go ahead.
And then the other thing you would be, if you would disapprove this budget, is because you're wanting some of the excess funds, the fund balance that Mr. Law was talking about, we would be wanting those back. So essentially, we would not be allowing HCAD to retain much of a fund balance at all. The only fund balance they would have would be the committed funds that they have in contingency and technology and litigation. everything else would be coming back to us, so they would have no fund balance to work with outside of that. And they would have to come back to us for approval. So if they needed more money for building expenses or any arbitrary expenses that come up, make salary, if they had to make adjustments there and they needed more money, they would have to come to us to get approval first. And so we're either allowing them to keep some of that excess money on the front end so they don't have to come back to us, or we're asking them to give it all back on the front end, and then they would have to come back to us on the back end for us to give approval if they needed it later down the road. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I would hope that they would keep enough money that every time something came up, they didn't have to come back to us.
It makes for a lot of red tape to have to go through, and when you're trying to operate a budget, an entity with employees and stuff, it muddies the water and it slows the process down. Anybody having to deal with government red tape understands that and how it can slow things down dramatically. So you can look at it one of two ways. We're allowing it either way, they're going to have to get the money from us. Either way. So we either allow them to retain some of that now on the front end so they don't have to come back to us, or we ask for it all back now and force them to come back to us anytime they need extra money.
Well, in my opinion, I hope they keep some enough to take care of their needs.
Any other discussion, questions?
So if we're disapproving this, that means they won't have to fund out.
So if we disapprove this, we're not allowing them
That means that we have what,
11 taxing, right? So
6 of those
six.
taxes actually do take place.
Correct. So even if we voted to disapprove the budget, doesn't mean that their budget's gonna be disapproved, because 6 of the taxing entities have to disapprove the budget for that to take effect. Mr. Law, do you know, or Mayor, whichever, I'm sure both of y'all have that information. Mr. Law, how many entities have already disapproved the budget?
I have received 3 resolutions.
You have received 3? Okay.
You're only 4. I
You
don't,
don't have the resolution.
okay. I have 3 resolutions at this time.
Okay. So that's all that counts, because until you actually receive that resolution,
Yes,
it's not official.
Right.
Okay.
And I can't imagine if you passed a resolution, you wouldn't send it to me. I mean, so.
But officially, you have 3.
Officially, I've received 3 resolutions at this time. And you're right, 6 is the magic number.
Who are the 3?
The city of Granbury, Hood County, and the city of Toller.
Is this on Toller ISD's, when do they have their meeting, do we know? Toller ISD. I haven't looked at that, I don't even know if it's on their agenda.
I found that part of the code.
You'll have to come up, I can't hear you.
I have the part of the code, let's see, I'm partially right. On 606C, it says the board may amend the approved budget at any time, but the secretary of the board must deliver a written copy of a proposed amendment to the presiding officer of the governing body of each taxing unit participating in the district not later than the 30th day before the date the board acts on it. And it doesn't ask for approval or disapproval. And I don't see anything else here that says that. So it's a matter of, we need more money, we start turning in an amendment, and 30 days later, it goes into effect. You have to put it in 30 days. It doesn't say approve or disapprove. It says you may amend the approved budget at any time.
So it's essentially like it operates the same way as it does now. They submit the budget, if we take no action, it just automatically approves.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if you took action, it would be disapproved. It doesn't.
We would have to take action to actually disapprove it.
They're operating with an already approved budget, and it says they may amend the approved budget at any time, but the secretary of the board must deliver a written copy of a proposed amendment to the presiding officer of the governing body of each taxing unit participating in the district not later than the 30th day before the date. It says you can amend the approved budget, you just have to get it to the taxing entities 30 days beforehand. It doesn't ask for approval or disapproval.
Okay, thank you.
So this,
Okay,
I find the whole thing
all right, thank you.
convoluted, so.
Thank you. Mr. Law?
Yeah, no, I don't, thank you. Actually, the mayor read to you what the law says regarding the amendment. And the reason I believe it's this way is so that we can notify the taxing units that we plan on adopting this amendment. You and the public would have the right to come to that meeting and say, before you adopt it, consider this, this, and this. But there's another section in the code, I think it's 6.10, that says that the taxing unit can oppose any action that the board of directors of an appraisal district takes if they take action within 30 days after that action of the board has been taken. Now, we keep throwing around boards. You're a board, they're a board, and all that sort of stuff. So let me rephrase it. The board of directors of an appraisal district takes action. Section 6.10, I believe it is, and I'm not a lawyer, but any taxing entity can object to file a resolution to disapprove any action that the board of directors of the appraisal district makes through that 6.10, I believe it is. So the same thing, if we did a budget amendment and we did it 30 days ahead, we held a public meeting, you came and said, we don't like this, the board could say, well, we're going to do it anyway, then you still have the 6.10 option to disapprove that adoption of the amendment. That's what I was kind of alluding to without...
That's an amendment within your already
Current
approved budget.
approved budget,
But if
yes.
you need more funds outside of that, you would have to come ask for those
Well,
funds.
no, I would recommend that the law says that we would come back through this amendment process.
Okay, so through the amendment
Yes,
process.
that's what I was trying to say. If we needed an extra $500,000, we would amend our current budget and say we need more money. We would send it to you 30 days before the board took any action. You would have the right to come to a meeting and say, yes, we love it, this is fine, or no, it's not fine. And then the board would either say, well, let's change that to $200,000 or whatever, and then they could adopt it. Or they could adopt the $500,000, and if you still disapprove, you could take section 6.10 action to disapprove the adoption of the amendment. It's pretty clear. You just got to be a lawyer and read through it.
So, once again, just to reiterate the resolution, if you would be disapproving it because you want those positions line itemed out, and could you explain why they're not line itemed out like it says that they should be?
I can, and if you were to go back and look at our 2024 budget and our 2023 budget, those were 4-page budgets. And I decided this year to put way more detail and way more transparency in the budget, and this is a 31-page budget. Now, if you were to look, I think you have the budget there. If you were to look like on page, let me find out where I dog-eared it here. Say on page 10. This is the budget that kind of addresses the collections department that we have. And if you'll see there, I have a collections manager. I have the salary for that person. I have the senior collection specialist. I have the salary. I have this collection specialist, and I have a salary in the budget for there. If you were to turn the page, you could see also for those particular employees, those 3 employees, there are retirement benefits. There is employment benefits of insurance, that would be health insurance. So there are the benefits that come along with that particular position. And I have, if you go over to page 12, you can actually see that the line item detail of where those benefits, how much those benefits are being paid out. Now, why is it different? In our previous year's budget, we had a very, very generalized 2-page budget that covered all the expenses, but then the chief appraiser would add another page that said, here's all the salaries and all the benefits. That was detailed. I've just chosen in this particular budget, I patterned it after another appraisal district that was doing this the same way. And I have every job title in there. There's only one spot in here that I've grouped appraisers together, and that's when you have an appraiser. Actually, I have on page on page 5, for example, I have 5 appraisers, and I have the summation of those 5 appraisers' salaries in that particular line because they're all at the same level. They all hold the same, like appraiser 1 type position. But that, if you wanted to divide that by 5, you'd get roughly what each one of those individuals make. So I have detailed it out. I've just detailed it out in a different fashion than what previous budgets have done. I know that this particular style of budget has been used by another appraisal district, and it's never received any type of negative response or saying that it's not in compliance with state law. It will list, and of course we don't have any capital expenditures really to speak of in here, but we would also have those labeled out in there if there were any. But we don't have any anticipation really for capital outlay expenditures.
Okay, so it is line item
It
out
is,
in
it's
there,
just done in a
it's
different way.
format.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that explanation. So, that second paragraph where it says, whereas the chief appraiser shall include the budget, a list showing each proposed position, that language could probably be stricken out of this resolution since it is in there, it's just in a different format. So if somebody would want to make an amendment to that motion to strike that language, you can do that. Or we can go ahead and take a vote on the motion before us. Right now we have a motion on the table to approve the resolution as presented by Mrs. Graft and seconded by Ms. Alana. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand to approve the resolution. That would be disapproving this HCAD budget. All in favor, raise your hand. All against, raise your hand. Okay, that is 2 in favor, Alana and Graft. 3 against is Mike Moore, Billy Wimberly, and myself. Okay, if no further business, this meeting is adjourned. The time is 10:01. Thank y'all for coming out today.